Austin, thank you so much for making time to be here. I've been a huge fan of your work for a long time. I love your book, The Science of Strength Training. But before we dig into some of those components, and I want to talk about your history competing, turning pro, and the evolution that you've made as a coach from somebody who was, in the trenches, doing the thing at a high level, competing, getting world-class education, and then transitioning into the coaching sides. Like, let's start in the beginning. What really got you involved in training into bodybuilding?
So I got talked into it originally. I think that's always a funny way to kind of put it. And it really, I think it showcases my personality. What I would say is being hard on myself, probably a weak point of my personality most often, but really just, something that was a transitional period in my life. So I got taken out of, it's a similar story that a lot of us have. You kind of get taken out of sports. For me, I got taken out of sports a bit prematurely. I thought that was going to be a longer part of my life, which kind of plays into where bodybuilding went to. But that really was a transitional period where sports got taken away. I was in university. I started working at this gym locally in college, or in high school. Sorry, in high school, and then kept working there in college. And I had made a close friend who also worked there, who was into competing. She had competed for a couple of years leading into that, had some success. I'm from Indiana, and she had won Miss Indiana in figure, and just like had some success there. And so I trusted her. And when she told me that, hey, there's this new men's physique thing going on, I think you got a good build for it, and you're obviously kind of meandering. You seem kind of lost. She's a straight shooter, and which I appreciate, which made us, very good friends very quickly. And she was like, look, you seem lost. You seem like you kind of need a direction. So I think you should do this, and I think you're going to be good at it. And there's a show coming up, which was the Kentucky Muscle Show, which is one of the biggest shows in the nation in general, but was definitely one of the biggest amateur shows at the time within the NPC and the IFBB and all that. And so she was like, hey, it's in 6 weeks. How about you just do it?
Oh,
like,
wow.
I don't think so, man. Like, thanks, but no thanks. But I was like, you know what? Fine. If it shuts you up, gets you off my back, I'll do it. I'm going to anticipate hating it, and we'll go from there. Then I can say I told you so and move on. But long story short, I ended up doing that show, ended up winning that show, and decided that, oh, I'm good at this. This will be fun. And maybe this kind of answers some of the questions to, well, what can I do competitively? What can I do that kind of fills that cup for me physically as a physical expression, and allows my life some control at a time where I didn't feel like I had much going on in terms of control. So, that kind of got me. That was the getting me into competing and all of that.
I love that. That's incredible. And how old were you at this point?
So I started when I was 19. So I was 19 when I did that first show. And then 9.5 months later, as the story goes, I earned my pro card. So I was 20 when I earned my pro card in the IFBB. And so, yeah, I was very, very young, and I had a very young early start to my competing.
I love that. So it brings up one thought and one question for you. First, I think this highlights how you took imperfect action. You did not have a plan going in. You're 6 weeks out, and you're like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to do it anyway, and let's see where the chips fall. And I think in today's world, there's so much information out there. And not that information is a bad thing, but people get paralyzed by inaction. And this seems like something for you that kind of came out of nowhere. You had somebody, a mentor, highlight, hey, why don't you just try this thing and push you past your comfort zone? You did something that really stretched you, and it flourished into something you had no idea what it could if you did not take that initial actions. I mean, huge hat tip to you. I think that's incredible. And it foreshadows probably a lot of the success that you've had in the industry. And I think it speaks very highly of your character. So I think that's incredible. And yeah, of course. And the second component, you played a lot of sports growing up. Tell me a little bit more about that. And then what component of sports do you think led into you being able to build a great physique? For example, were you doing a lot of basic 5x5, heavy lifting, squat, bench, deadlift, growing up at a younger age, and you built that foundation where that allowed you to compete at a higher level because you had such a big base to come from?
Yeah, no, great question. So I started sports when I was very young. So my brother is a couple of years older than I am. And so when he started sports, I started sports. That's how it went. And so I would just play with I would just play with my brother and his friends, or my brother on his team. And so I just got used to just playing with older kids and getting used to what that was. And that kind of stayed throughout my entire sports career. I just kind of always played up as much as I could. If there was an opportunity to play up a grade or two, I would. And I started, so I started very young with sports. I was, obsessed. That's pretty much what my family does. I come from a big sports family, a family of coaches. My grandfather was a college football coach. My entire, I grew up in locker rooms, and it's just, that's where I come from. So that started early. And then when I never remember it, but it's like 11 or 12. I was around that age when I started to get into lifting, and my brother got me into lifting from a very young age, and really hammered in the principles and the importance of technique and progression and regressions and all of these things that he was learning. And, he had me master the body weight stuff before he said, okay, we're going to get you on some machines and maybe some free weight stuff. And so there was kind of this there were these checks and balances across my lifting career starting early. And so that kind of got me into the shuffle of sports and lifting. And then throughout high school, I had a very, very good, I was very, very blessed to have a very overqualified and a very good strength conditioning coach. And so he really kept those principles going. And he was the person teaching my brother, who then taught me. And then I got old enough to then start working with him. And so, got into everything from Olympic weightlifting to, your heavy squat, bench, deadlifts, power cleans, hang cleans, all of that stuff. And then we always got free reign towards the end of the sessions to kind of do a little bit of a
Pump session, baby.
thing. Yeah, pump session.
Yeah.
Like, hey, as long as you get checked off on your lifts, the last 20 minutes is yours. Take it. Like, if you want to do bicep curls, you want to do chest flies, like, the world's your oyster. Have fun. I'm not going to stop you. Just don't get hurt. Don't be an idiot. But so, that kind of, I got a really good, well-rounded lifting education from a very young age. And I never really, as you do, you never really think about that. And I hadn't really thought about that until, I got into coaching more, and I realized how good I had it, and how grateful I am for that. And I think in a big way, and I'm sure we'll get to this, but I think in a big way that shaped my career and trying to kind of be that person for other people, like someone that can just show them the way as I was taught. And how grateful I am now looking back that I had that opportunity to be taught by very, very smart people. But anyways, that's the sports and kind of the early lifting, and that kind of shaped my physique. And I think genetically I just had a good shape. And I also got into competing. I have good muscle insertions. I had good muscle bellies. I'm very full very easily. I can stay relatively lean. I can put on muscle quite easily. I'm already quite strong naturally. So it was just like, there was a lot stacked up for me. And I think that was my friend who got me into competing. She saw that, and she was like, hey, dude, you just got to do this. Like, just try it. I think you're going to be really good at it. And I'm really grateful that she pushed me in that direction. But yeah, that was kind of the catalyst for all of those things. And then again, like, as I was getting into competing, last thing I'll say on this, like, when I was getting into competing, I was also going through the heart of puberty. And so my newbie gains were coupled with puberty gains. And so, like, I don't think I could there was no swing and miss. It was just like, dude, do everything you possibly can do and have some fun, because this is going to be a hell of a ride. And it was. I mean, it's crazy what growth I saw in a matter. Again, like, I went from like first starting to compete to turning pro in the IFBB as a natural competitor in 9.5 months. And so it's just like, that was I couldn't have picked a better gap of time to actually start doing it. It lined up perfectly for me.
Yeah. And I think a piece of it lining up perfectly, again, is having that early mentorship and having that exposure, and people who helped you focus on the basic components. Fortunately, I come from a similar background of being around coaches. My grandfather, football coach, dad was always coaching me growing up, things like that. I was always involved in physical activity. He was in martial arts. I was playing with his weights, all this stuff at a young age. And then when I got into middle school, I had a really good weightlifting coach, competed in Olympic weightlifting, stuff like that, right? So like, having a foundation of mastering these movements at that point, as well as like learning technical proficiency and being able to really, coordinate movements and do those things very effectively, builds a foundation, which served me later on. And the reason this is important is I feel like so many people miss these components, especially now when there's so much information out there and people want to jump into advanced programming without that foundation. in much in a way that this foundation of gaining this knowledge has helped you become a better coach, building this physical foundation and all these reps and doing things correctly and focusing on very basic, simple things in the beginning. It allows you to specialize in things at a younger age than most people otherwise would be, in conjunction with puberty, newbie gains, all of these things all working together. So I think it just highlights the importance of good mentorship, good guidance at an early age, and how foundational that can be for so much growth and development long term.
Yeah, no, I couldn't say it better. It was something that, again, like as you're going through it, you don't really realize what you've got or what you had. I'm really grateful, again, like to everyone in my life, my parents, my grandparents, like everyone dedicated, and my coaches at the time, and all the teachers that I had, like everyone truly just gave what they could give to, me and everyone else around me. And so again, they just put me in the best position to succeed. And I'm really grateful as well that, although I was pushed, I wasn't pushed so much that I wanted to quit everything. It's like, I wasn't pushed to the point of burnout. I was pushed to the point of like, okay, yep, take your time. I see it. Take your time. You ready? All right, let's get back at it. And, so some years I would play sports year round. I'd play, if I had a gap, I would play fall ball, or I'd play, we're going to play travel basketball over the summer because this lines up with this, and there's a gap here, and we want to keep your skills sharp. And I wanted to do those things, but there were some years where I didn't, and I was allowed not to. And I think that was really important, to where, hey, if you just want to take this time and just exist, like that's fine too. And I'm not going to fight you on it. And I didn't, obviously I didn't know why at the time, but I just knew sometimes I felt like doing the thing I loved, and sometimes that I didn't. And I'm just really grateful that that was allowed, because I think a lot of people, again, that come from like heavy sports families, you're just pushed into it always. And it's like, well, if you're going to be the best, you got to show up. And it's like, all right, maybe not, maybe I just need a moment to be a human being and just exist as a kid, and so I think that allowed and facilitated a lot. But yeah, I mean, the mentorship, the teaching, it's something that I will cherish forever. And I truly hope to continue to pay it forward the best that I can and be a steward of that information. And, information's not ours to have or to hold. It's truly, I think, a transfer of knowledge across generations. And I think we all hold whatever capacity we can hold. And I think we're taught certain things for a reason. And again, you kind of glom onto the information that you can facilitate and you can transfer. Because I've learned a lot. I've probably, I've forgotten more than I know, for sure. And I've been taught so much in my life that it's like, I'll never know that again. I'll never try and learn that again. I don't have any curiosity to learn that again. But the physical stuff, the lifting stuff, the all of it, there's something to that really just attached onto me that I haven't been able to shake since I was, 11 or 12 years old. It was just this thing that I turned to at all times in my life. If I was anxious as a kid, if I was, feeling a certain way and in any capacity emotionally, if I felt scared or nervous, if I felt fearful towards any social situation, like I would just go to the gym. I would go play basketball. I would go lift, and that was my safe space. And that became my safe space. It taught, I learned how to cope with so many things through lifting and through physical expression, more specifically. And I think that, again, that showed me more so than anything. And I'm realizing more as I mature that is just, I'm here to sort of, or a purpose that I can give myself at least, is to be a steward of this information, be a steward of that outlook and that perspective, and try and pass it on in the best that I can.
I love that. And I love your ability to be introspective and look back and realize the gifts that physical expression and physicality have really, really given you. I find it to be really interesting myself too, where I reflect back on some of these different lessons and the ways that training, whether it be for performance, whether it be for physique, has bled over into different areas of my life. And those same lessons transfer. They are the same foundational bedrock, just applied differently. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about, fitness itself really being a force multiplier for optimal human performance and development in so many areas, because both from a, down to a cellular level, a healthier body, yes, can perform better, but many of the lessons that we learn throughout, delayed gratification, right? They transfer to everything else, business, relationships, so on and so forth. And so I really enjoy hearing your perspective on how this has been something that has shifted in your life. And now tell me a little bit further about this, shift into bodybuilding at a younger age. And obviously you competed there for a while. And then I realized you did some work with MI40 and N1. Like, tell me about kind of that transition from bodybuilding into some more of the education and the coaching space.
Yeah, it just felt like a natural transition. Again, I come from a family of coaches and teachers. I was pretty much around coaches and teachers my entire life, whether I was related to them or not. And I don't know, I think you just kind of get into this frame of mind of this is what you do. You learn things and you teach them to other people. And I also just had that urge to teach other people the things I was learning. I felt like it helped me learn them better. And I learned from a young age too that I forget who told me this, but it was a good nugget of wisdom to hang on to for me, which was if you know material enough to teach it, then you've truly learned it, then you truly understand it. And so I took that sort of in stride. And during university, I started a YouTube channel. I started a business. I started a social media. I started having more of a social media presence. And with the sole purpose of, I just want to share this information and I want to share the things that I'm learning in school. And I want to share the things that I'm learning in my lifts and as a competitor and maybe pass something along. And, I saw that people were making that into a business. And so I was like, maybe I could do that too. And I didn't think too much of it. I didn't overthink it. I'm a big overthinker. And I could be crippled by that. But, the moments that I've found success in my life and career and everything else have been through moments where I've just stuck my neck out, put myself into it, and decided that the pursuit of what I was going after and the result of that pursuit was worth more than whatever came along with it, whether that was ridicule or whether that was someone making fun of me or just not understanding why I was doing what I was doing. For example, when I started a YouTube channel in college, and started posting my lifts and, started being a bodybuilder and posting, pictures on the internet with me lifting or without a shirt on or whatever. It's like, you get made fun of, you kind of get pointed at and ridiculed.
Yeah.
People don't really understand what you're trying to accomplish with it, which is understandable, and that lies deep within their own insecurities and fears likely. And that's fine. And that's something you learn as you mature and grow as a human. But I didn't care as much. And I really appreciate that about my younger self. And there's something that my younger self can teach my current self, I think at certain times throughout the last several years, which is don't get bogged down by what you think other people will think. Like, don't get bogged down by that. What's the goal of it? What's the mission of what you're trying to do with the information you're sharing? And like that, let that be enough, because that is enough. And you're always going to have someone, anytime you're sticking your neck out, anytime you're putting yourself out into the world, people are going to have an opinion about it. That's the way our world is shaped. And then social media has certainly created a channel of communicating those opinions. And you're then rewarded for those opinions, right? And ridicule and reaction. And so that's just the world we live in. So that's fine. That doesn't have to impact me. And again, I'm speaking more to like, I'm giving the advice I also need to hear for those listening.
Yeah.
So it's, again, I all this wisdom is something that I have taken in, but true wisdom is being able to sort of take your own advice in some way, shape, or form. So, and actually be able to implement things that you've learned. So, I'm still trying to actualize those things. But yeah, man, I think that was just sticking my neck out there and taking a chance on myself has really been something that has defined my life in a big way, especially professionally, and putting myself into positions that I probably shouldn't have been in. I didn't get asked to be in a lot of the times. I just
Yeah.
I kept asking until the answer was yes.
Yeah. Persistence pays, and particularly in the world right now where there's, a lot of access to information and your ability to implement a lot of these things, even in the face of adversity, even in the face of ridicule. It's not something that's easy. And there's a lot of fear around that for young coaches, young practitioners, people who are starting businesses, all of these things. And it is real. I get it too. I'm 36. I've had an online business since I was 23, and in the beginning it was crippling. It was the fear of what are my peers going to think? What are my mentors going to think about this? Right. And then it's all the feedback that you get from people who like, why do you have your shirt off? Oh, like you're obviously on gear. Oh my God, you're so tiny, whatever it is. And you can be as resilient on the same post, which is always fun. But
Yeah.
like you said, let the mission be enough. What is the purpose of you doing this? And keep that front and center. Realize that, yeah, you're going to face this adversity. You're going to deal with people who aren't going to understand what you're doing and why. And again, as you mentioned, it's them expressing their own insecurity. But realize that the mission, the thing that you're working towards, is what the goal is, and everything else is going to be noise. And if you focus on that and continue to take swings, that's going to take you incredibly far. And I think that's really important, especially for young coaches and practitioners, to understand that component of doing it for the mission, not necessarily for the social media numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen and again, speaking from experience, like I've seen the social media numbers. I've had the crazy growth on social. I've seen the, million views on videos and whatever. It's just like, okay, great. That's cool. There's something that comes from that. That's not useless. That'd be crazy to say that's useless. But, you also have to have some tact and understanding of, well, what do I now do with that? And how do I transfer that and channel that into something that's useful, not just for clout, but I've just never been interested in clout per se. I've been interested in just being respected as a coach and a practitioner. And I think that's fueled a lot of what's guided my career, I guess I could say, because for me, it's more of I came into this and I've given presentations on this, and it's been an important part of my career. And I think I keep it front of mind because I never want to forget that as the main goal, which is the goal of this is to be able to keep doing this as a career forever until I can't. So like when getting into this, I recognized early on the people who got into this and stayed into this and stayed in it as a coach and as an educator and stuck it out for the long haul were the legends. Those are the people. Those are the people we respect. These are the people that we always turn back to of like, oh, I remember, like, oh, I look up to him. I look up to him. I have a lot of respect for him. He's been around a long time. He's just seen it. And I revered that. I respected that. I didn't respect like, oh, they built a 7-figure business. They built it. I just like, I never, all those things are great. I'd love to make that kind of money at some point in my life, but I didn't get into it for that. And that's not really something that ever really motivated me from the onset. It truthfully was, I just want to be respected for what I do. And I want to be respected. If I have an opinion on something, I want to be respected for that opinion. I want it to be a good opinion. I want it to actually be useful in the world of lifting and what we're doing here. But that played a big role.
Yeah. If I could summarize that really concisely, I think it would be like coaching mastery is the thing that's always been something that you have sought out. It's being the best at what you do and truly understanding it to a different level. And I think with mastery, again, it really comes with that experience. And I think that's a perfect segue actually into the power of in-person experience, particularly in a world that is now so popular with the online space. And, I've said this for years that I feel like I would be nowhere near the quality of coach that I am online if I did not have a ton of experience working with clients in person, years of early mornings, the late nights, weekends, all of these components, because the number of things that you see that you cannot necessarily learn just via programming, via online, and like the energy that you see directly from a client, how they react to different things, the slight cues and adjustments, all of these little things are almost hard to describe. If you don't have that, I mean, yeah, you can calculate macros and design a program, but that's not necessarily coaching in and of itself, right? And so what do you feel like has been such a huge element from the in-person experience and how that transfers?
I think in a big way, it does, as you said, you cannot, to learn humans, you have to be around other humans. Like, it's just not something that you can read about or listen to something about. It's just like, to truly get that experience, you have to experience it yourself. And obviously we can learn from others. We can get insights from others. We can get insights from anecdotal experience. We can get insights from research. We can get insights from other people who have mastered that material in that as a concept. But truthfully, you cannot download that and kind of make it something that's useful to you unless you integrate it with that experience. And for example, one of my biggest things with MI40 when I interned there was, again, going back to the persistence, I was the first intern at MI40 ever, and it wasn't an option. It wasn't a position. I just wanted to do it, and I needed internship hours to graduate university. And I had 2 options. One was MI40. The other one was St. Vincent Sports Performance in Indianapolis, which was a great place to go. I mean, you're working with professional athletes of all kinds, and it was a really awesome place. I did a practicum hour. I did my practicum, which is a small internship there. And so it was an option to go back. But I didn't want that. I wanted MI40. I wanted to go where the action was because I was in bodybuilding at the time. And I also saw those guys. I didn't really, I didn't want to be a strength conditioning coach anymore. Which is what the St. Vincent's place was. I wanted to be a trainer and a coach. And that was very clear in my head at that point at university. And I'd already started a business. I already had a business. I was already coaching clients. I'd already turned pro. I'd already had all this kind of, I'd already had all these realizations. And so going down to my 40, the biggest unlock for me was putting the practical, or putting the classroom experience, putting the classroom knowledge, the textbook knowledge, which I had a lot in. I got very good grades in college. I did not have many issues with the information itself, but I did with the implementation aspect. I didn't quite understand how to put it into practice, right? I could tell you about all the
Yeah.
periodization models. I could tell you all about all these things that are physiologically happening. I could tell you about the anatomy, but I didn't really know how to piece it all together in practice. And that's what MI40 taught me that summer. You know, I spent several months there, and 6 days a week, I shadowed everyone I could shadow that worked there. I mean, as long as I could be there, I would be there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I would be there. I would be shadowing trainers. I would be cleaning. I would be scrubbing. I would be doing all the grunt work. But I would also, hey, I'm halfway. Hey, we're about to start the session. You want to come along? And I'm so grateful for the trainers that were there at the time who took me in and taught me everything they knew. And you know, I was there at a very amazing time of the people and the minds that were there. And they let me shadow them. And then at some point in my internship, they started to let me run some of the sessions myself and like actually get experience taking people through these sessions. And that in-person experience unlocked everything for me and really kind of clued me into the art that goes along with the science of lifting. And because I obviously they were entrenched into the science of things, but not in a way that I had been exposed to.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like it wasn't an experience of reading PubMed articles. It was an experience of like, yeah, that's a scientific concept. Yep, that's you need. I assume you already know that. Fantastic. You're not impressing me with that. Go out there and apply it. Go out there and be useful to someone. Take that information and make it practical for yourself and for someone else. And that challenged me deeply. And that was sort of just like trial by fire. Go do it, go learn it, go be exposed to it, and just go be around it for several months. And so that got me more into the in-person stuff. And you know, I kind of started out as an in-person trainer, but when I first started training, but I didn't. I just put people through what I did. Like I didn't know how to actually create a session. I didn't know what any of that meant. Again, I could tell you what all this stuff was if you gave me an exam, but I couldn't actually put it onto the floor. And so, you know, MI40 unlocked that for me and allowed me to be exposed to all that stuff. And so, you know, in person, the subtleties of the human experience are on display, right? Because we have a job that is very interesting where you're getting people in some of their most vulnerable moments of being uncomfortable and having to do something that most of them likely don't want to be doing. They have to be working very hard at a time they're typically very tired. They're distracted by other things. You know, it may be a financial strain on them, but they're committing to that because they know they should invest in this because it's going to make them a better person. It's going to help them live longer. It's going to make them healthier. And again, like you're having to deal with not only all of that, all the physicality aspects of training itself and putting someone through this very stressful thing that's uncomfortable, but you're also having to deal with all the psychology of what that brings as well, right? And I listen back
Yeah.
to you and Jeb talk, which is, you know, psychology is obviously such a big part of this equation. But again, it as someone who spent time you know, I spent almost a decade solely online, and I've spent time in person. Like I've done both, and what I will say is my in-person experience is irreplaceable. Like I just can't stress it enough. If you have, I don't think it's an absolute requirement, but I think you're much better off to do it. And I think it's going to be something you'll never regret because you're going to learn everything that you need to learn and take from that, and all the subtleties of like technique and programming and all the advice that you're hearing. For example, I'll end with this for context. We get, you know, right now we'll speak to kind of like the menopause conversation, perimenopause, menopause, and all the talk around lifting heavy. Okay. Well, I can very quickly realize, and you can tell me very quickly by the way you present that information, if you've ever worked with someone in person before that wasn't an established athlete, because lifting heavy is very relative. It takes a high level of skill, and to do it effectively and to do it safely. And to tell someone middle aged who's already anxious about going into this environment that they then need to strap on weight that they're ill prepared to lift tells me everything I need to know about your past experience, right? It's just,
Yeah.
again, with that in-person experience, you're able to very quickly sparse out, like, yes, that's relevant information, but understand, like, my experience with people in person, these are my clients in person, and it's going to take us probably 3 months to get you to that place where you can start to lift there appropriately. And that's great. That's okay. But understand that there's an on-ramp period that we're going to have to put you through to be able to truly take that advice and run with it, right? And so, as again, that seems like a subtlety, but it's important, and it's made me a better online coach, because I don't just take these prescriptions, I don't just take these things that I'm learning, or what the studies are saying, and just throwing them on a blank slate and just saying, like, hey, this is science based, this is the research, man, you got to do it. And it's like, okay, that informs our decision, sure, but we got to get back to, that's the science of it, but what's the art of it? And the art of it, I think, is what you learn with in-person experience. You don't get the art of it online as much. You just don't. You don't get access to that. Whatever you're pulling from there, whatever's in the universe there, that whatever knowledge is there for you to get, I don't think you're able to access it fully without the in-person experience.
I agree with everything you've said over the last like 20 minutes in this regard. I took the other angle where I went the sport performance route.
Sure.
And so, early on, I had my CSCS before I graduated college, got it in the last semester, studied all the Russian texts, was nerding out in Verkhoshansky in my, in my room and all that stuff. Right.
Very similar.
And
yeah, exactly.
yeah. And it was great. However, in the beginning, it didn't fully register until I was able to start working with athletes. And I had some athlete clients in the beginning, out of college when I first moved to Colorado. But really, when I dove fully into sport performance, working at Landau Performance, still over in the Denver metro area, and being surrounded by, and not just that, by the world-class coaches who pushed me to, like, they knew I had the book smarts for it, but it was like, okay, now how does this actually transfer? How does dynamic correspondence actually transfer, right? Versus just being able to say these buzzwords or write an article about it and throw it up on T Nation, right? And so it's a big difference between, being able to understand what these concepts are, but how they actually apply. And in many cases, what you learn is the application of these different things in the way that people put out content in absolutes. It's not how it works in the real world. It really isn't. It might get clicks, totally get that aspect of the game too, but if you can't explain the nuance and how that applies, you're doing a disservice to your clients to a grave degree. And you mentioned the menopause example as well. You had my mind going directly with a client I trained for years. Jenna, she's absolutely fantastic. She's lost like 140 pounds and she's kept it off and made this incredible transformation. And this was actually when I was working with a ton of athletes, and she came referred from a client from my previous gym. And so she came in, and it was like right when our NFL group was going. So she's, very overweight, undertrained. She had tried like all the Orange Theory, all of these things. And so the first thing, like, she's got a great personality. So she took it in stride. Like, she thought it was awesome actually, but it was like, how can I make her feel comfortable with these different elements? And if I was just looking at things online right now, I'd be like, okay, yeah, we got to put you within, 1 to 2 reps of reserve. We got to push you close to failure. Like, no, like, we had to pull everything way back. And I feel like when I see a lot of programming online, it doesn't factor in those components. It would be, yeah, just jump in, do a dumbbell bench press. We're going to go, 4 by, 6 to 8 reps and take it close to failure. The person hasn't done a push-up in 15 years. Like,
right. Maybe
we got to build some of those foundational components a little bit more, and really make sure that system is established and ample time frame for, frankly, accumulating people to what it's like to actually push. Because what feels like failure to them, or what feels like close to failure, it probably isn't really close, but mentally they're not going to be able to get over that hump until they start to conquer how it feels, and being able to get over how they're probably tired, how they're distracted, how all these different elements of stress are also feeding into this big financial decision that they have made. And I think that's a really important concept that has to be communicated and done effectively if it's going to lead to the transformation that we're all really in this for. So I appreciate you like digging into those concepts. I think it's really important. A slight segue off of that. What you did say before is people are often coming in tired, distracted, fatigued. Everybody can relate to that. I think that's something that has really amped up, or at least awareness of it has amped up quite a bit over the last couple of years. Getting more into the nuts and bolts of training, this overall fatigue, the lack of sleep, chronic stress that people are experiencing, how do we need to factor that in to training? How do we need to factor that into nutrition protocols? And to give you an example, let's say it's the average 35 to 45-year-old parent who has experience in the gym. Maybe they played sports in high school, but they haven't been as consistent lately, and they want to be able to lose weight, build some muscle. Like, what do we need to focus on from a overall perspective with that high level of fatigue?
Yeah, I think it's a volume equation across the board. Volume of effort, volume of intensity, obviously volume of load, and volume of stimulus as a kind of by and large as an umbrella. But again, I think it all comes back to volume and also exercise selection, in my opinion, because if someone, for example, if I have someone who comes in to a session, at the front end of every session, you have the trainer conversation. Hey man, how you doing? How you feeling today? Did you sleep well? What'd you do what'd you do over the weekend? You're trying, obviously you're there to have a social interaction like a normal person, but you're also fishing for things. So are you tired today? How was work? Are you stressed out? Did you traveling all weekend? Did you drink all weekend? Like, what was happening and how are you feeling now? And as much as I have a planned session for today, that is going to depend on so many things if that goes the way that I planned it or not. And every answer that they give helps really inform the direction that that session will take. Right. And I think that's a big part, I think, of that in-person experience transferring online, is like you start to learn what these subtleties are on a more consistent basis and how those transfer to a session. So for example, a decision from an exercise selection standpoint that could change is, okay, we came in, like we've been working on back squats. Back squats were on the agenda for today. It's something this person had a goal of improving. They come in, hey man, I damn near fell asleep on the way here. I'm tired, didn't sleep well. Work was stressful today. I had to run somewhere for my kids. It's just, I'm lucky I'm here. I'm grateful I'm here, but like, it ain't my day. Great. I am not going to put a bar on your back. I'm just not. I don't see, knowing this person, knowing that we're still working on the pattern. It's not it's not, they can't just wake up from a slumber and head into a back squat. It's just not something that I'm going to do. Okay, so we have options. We have a hack squat, we have a pendulum squat, we have a leg press, we have a hip press. We have all of these different modalities and all of these different implements and tools at our disposal to make a decision here and what's going to be best for you in this moment. And likely it's going to be something with more external stability, something that we're going to be able to still push a high effort on without getting injured, and all of these different things that's kind of going on in my mind in real time. And I'll lower the volume of that session. Instead of doing, if I had 3 really hard sets planned, I may still go 3 sets, but I'll go kind of the first 2 are feeler sets, and the final one is like, hey man, this is a send it set. I want you to give me what you got today, but whatever that looks like right now is fine. Like, just give me what you got for this one set, rather than doing that for 2 or 3 sets. And so those are subtle decisions that are sort of being made. And I think those are decisions that could should transfer over to really anyone listening, whether you're a trainer or you are being trained or just love to train. All those are decisions that you should be thinking about and considering. And that all just falls under the umbrella of auto-regulation and just truly adjusting your training to how you feel on any given day at any given moment. Like yesterday, I just sent it. I decided that I'm just going to send it yesterday for whatever reason. I just felt like that. I did the stack on, if I was doing a machine, I just did the stack. That was like, I'm just doing sets of 8 to 10 with the stack. This is what today is. And for whatever reason, that was it. But the weeks leading up to yesterday, that's not how I trained. I wasn't feeling that way. I didn't feel very motivated to do that. And so I just got in the work that felt good, and I pushed where I could push, and I pulled back where I felt like I needed to pull back. And that comes from experience. And that comes from, allowing yourself to be intuitive and to allow flexibility and understand that although there's a prescription and there's an idea and there's a place we ideally want you to get, I'm just happy you're here. I'm happy you showed up. I'm happy you're doing the work, right? Even if that's 70% of what we imagined it being, that's better than 0%. And that's something that, if done consistently over time, as obviously, as we always talk about, is going to get you much further than doing things great some of the time or rarely, right? To be good consistently is much better than just being great on rare occasions, especially when it comes to health, right? We get most of the benefit from the first kind of couple sets, right? Of whether, if we're talking about lifting, the most stimulating sets are your first 2 or 3, right? And after that, you may get a little more, but it's going to be less, and you're getting closer to the point of diminishing returns. So do something well enough consistently, and that's good. Don't overthink it.
I love that. The ability to auto-regulate, make those adjustments on the fly. It comes from wisdom, and wisdom comes from experience and
Yeah.
introspection and looking from where you've came, what's working, what's not, and being able to go from there. I love that you had a send it day yesterday.
Yeah.
On a similar note, man, I've been coming back from a little bit of a quad strain. And so I was doing hack squats, right? And I'm like, I'm going to play with a different type of progression. And so I was doing like reverse banded hack squats,
Yeah.
and my progression was like, okay, thick band, medium band, small band, up. Thick band, medium. I'm like, okay. And I got all the way through, and I'm like, okay, let's do one more. Let's go without it. Let's see how we feel really in that deep squat position. And it ended up being like, I felt really good. No twinges, no like, oh shit, like let's not push this out of the bottom right here. And ended up being a great workout. But it's that like intuition. It only comes from that experience. And that experience only comes from being able to play the long view and view what is your mission truly when it comes to going in the gym. What are you trying to get out of this? Try not to look at fitness from a 90-day perspective, a 30-day challenge, whatever it is, but what is this going to do for me over the long haul? And when we start to have that vision for ourselves and for how fitness is going to be something that improves our life in many different ways, it allows us to make the right decisions and to adjust, and again, play that game in a way where we can stay consistent. And I think that's such a crucial component for success in anything, but particularly in training.
Yeah. And I think seeing, at a 30,000 foot view is like seeing your fitness as investing in like the S&P 500 rather than playing the lottery. It's like you're making micro deposits over time that are going to compound with interest rather than putting all your money on a lottery ticket and hoping that you hit. Because we know what happens if you play with your health like you play the lottery. It just doesn't work out in your favor. You're left with very low independence as you get older. If you have life at all, you're riddled with disease, immobility, lack of function, and a lack of health, and a lack of ability to actually experience life, versus those who just kind of put the micro deposits in on a daily level, right? They deposit the pennies, and each day is an opportunity to kind of deposit those pennies into the account that are going to compound over time. And every decision, I kind of, for those who are visual, I like to kind of tell clients that every decision is a penny deposited. And how many pennies did we deposit today? Hopefully at least one. The goal is at least one. Did you get out for a walk? Did you make a good decision nutritionally? Did you get in for a workout? Did you make a decision that prioritized sleep? Whatever you did, like, that's a penny. And as long as we deposit that one penny today, great. We have an opportunity to do it again tomorrow and maybe add one onto that. But at the end of the day, don't play your health like you play the lottery.
You are wise beyond your years. Truly. I love that
Well,
perspective.
been
Love
surrounded
that.
by
Awesome.
very wise people in my life, so I've been very fortunate.
No doubt. Hey, let's talk about your book, The Science of Strength Training. What inspired you to write it? And what are the key messages you want people to take away and be able to apply to their life?
So the book came in a funny way, like most things in my life. The book was an opportunity, serendipity. And it's something that's been a theme in my life, and especially professionally, but even personally, which is this idea of serendipity. And if you have skin in the game, you've put yourself in a position to have opportunity come about that otherwise never would. And that was the book. So, I'd been putting out content for years and years and years, YouTube, Instagram, writing articles, everything I possibly could, just putting out information, not knowing who was looking at it, who was reading it. And one day I got an email that said, book proposal, Science of Strength Training. And I was like, this seems fake. I'm just going to delete it. Because as we all do, if you have any presence on the internet, you get people slide in your DM, slide in your email, like, hey, if I send you a t-shirt, will you risk your entire reputation to promote
This
it?
pre-workout. Yeah.
I'll give you a free t-shirt, or I'll send you $5. And it's just silly stuff, right? It's a lot of just like, hey man, I'm trying to get my stuff out there. Will you represent it? And I just don't even have the bandwidth for those experiences. So I just are those emails. So I just delete them pretty instantly. Yeah. I'm just like, delete. And no offense to people who sending them, like, your hustle is your hustle, but like, I don't need to be, I don't owe you anything to be a part of it. And so with the book, again, the opportunity came through an email one day. I showed it to my wife. I'm glad I didn't delete it. I almost did. I showed it to my wife and she said, yeah, this seems legit. And then we looked up the person who sent it. He was legit. She's like, dude, this is legit. I think you should email them back and do whatever they ask you to do. I don't know what are you questioning? Like, just answer the email. Like, what's wrong with it?
Just do it.
Like, yeah, and like funny enough, it's like allow the good thing to happen. Like you've worked this hard, like maybe it's a good thing. Not everything that's happening is bad, right? Allow the good to also come in. And so yeah, the book opportunity came through, and it ended up being a wonderful experience. And so I got approached for the book. The book wasn't, I had this idea. I think if you've spent any time writing or thinking, or if you're a curious person, like, and you've been spending time putting out information as a coach and kind of in this teacher role, there's always some part of you that's like, yeah, I'd love to write a book. I'd love to kind of have my work out there in the world, right? And I actually made an Instagram. It still exists. I made it in 2017, and it's just, I think it's at the fitness writer or at fitness writer or something. It still exists as a handle. I looked
I'm
it up.
checking it out.
Yeah, check it out. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, it's something about being a fitness writer. And I made one post, and it was something about like, I want to start putting more of my writing out in the world, and I want to write a book someday. I don't know if that's ever going to happen or when it's going to be, but that's what I want to do. And so that was like 2017ish. And then 2019 rolls around, not thinking anything of it. I was still creating content, making video content, teaching stuff. I'd spent a year and a half teaching seminars within one, traveling around the world doing that. And 2019 rolls around, and a publisher, an editor, was looking for an author that they had an idea for a book. And I had enough content out in the world that they were able to find my name, they were able to find my content, and they decided that out of the people that they looked at, that they liked what I had to say. They liked the way I packaged it. They liked the fact that it blended these worlds of conversational writing that was relatable with the scientific, more academic referenced work. And ironically, that's what I got counted off for in school. Throughout my entire university career, I got counted off for being too conversational. I didn't write academic enough. And ironically, that was the reason I got the opportunity to write the book, because I was conversational, because I was more relatable to people. And they wanted a book written for the regular average gym goer that was going to walk into a Barnes and Noble and look at a book that's about strength training, and that's not guys like us. We don't always walk into a bookstore and be like, so obviously you do at some point in your career,
Yeah.
but it was more for those people, and that's what they had in mind. And so that's what inspired the book. I got asked to write it, and they gave me a lot of autonomy over writing it. They brought the idea to me. They kind of gave me free reign over the outline. They gave me free reign to what went into the book. I would say I got 90% of what I wanted, and I compromised on
Pretty
10.
good.
That's pretty good for a book.
Yeah.
Pretty good for a first one, especially. And so, yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity, and it's gone on to be a huge success, which I'm obviously extremely grateful for, and it's gotten my work out into the world. And as you do, I think, and maybe not as you do, I don't know, but I wanted to create something that I would have wanted. What would I would have wanted? What was the thing that I could have really used in a really useful, practical way when I first got into lifting, or when I first became a coach? Like that's really the book. That really encompasses the book. It's a visual encyclopedia of strength training that goes over, again, kind of the art and the science of lifting, and everything from muscle physiology to the exercises that sort of, we talk about placing tension on muscles and how that creates adaptation and growth. And then we talk about chapter 2 is all about what are the exercises, what are the tools that then place that resistance on the muscle to make it adapt. And then chapter 3 is, well, what are the common injuries that are going to inevitably happen? How do we work around those? How do we get back from them? And then chapter 4 is, how do we put all that into a program? What do programs look like? What are different adaptations to programs that we could, account for or program for? And so, that is the book. And again, what was the book that I would have wanted as an early on lifter or an early on trainer? And I think I did a decent job at kind of the marriage between those two concepts.
I can speak as a reader. You did a phenomenal job. The visual illustrations in there, exceptional. They do a really good job, better than any other like coaching training related book that I've really consumed, man. So a huge shout out to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Of course.
that was sort of a representation too of, for me personally, it is the perfect bow on the first, pretty much the first decade of my professional career.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the timeline it lines up with. It's, again, it was an opportunity. How do I sort of package in the most beautiful way everything I've learned in the first decade of my career, and how can I package it in a way to kind of convey the messages and to teach others what I had learned. And yeah, that's how kind of how I view it. It's a perfect like like an actual representation, a physical representation of everything that the first decade of my career represents. And the future books are going to represent different aspects of that career. I'm working on about to start working on a new one with a couple of co-authors, which is exciting. But nothing will mean more than kind of that first one, I think, because
Yeah.
again, it was just that first opportunity. They took a chance on me. They didn't need to, and I tried to talk them out of it. I offered up other names. I was like, hey, I think actually this person's be better to write it. I think this person would be better to write it. And they were like,
We want
respectfully,
you.
like, yeah, like respectfully, we don't have much time and we're not going to waste it. And we wouldn't have got you on the phone if we didn't want you to do it. And I don't care who those other people are. We're pretty decided on you. And so I don't know what your problem is, but hopefully you want to do it. And, I finally was just like, all right, I accept it. I'll do it. I'm really scared, but here we go. And I was very anxious and very scared the whole time I was writing it. I was so worried about being judged, right? And it was such a representation of my knowledge up to that point, and I didn't want to get something wrong. I didn't want to misrepresent something. And yeah, I mean, it was just like, and I like holding my breath as it came out, like, what are the problems? Where did I mess up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope I get to do a volume two, because there's certainly a few things that I'd want to update and refresh. But all in all, if it never changes, I'm very, very proud of it.
No, it's a great book. I highly recommend grabbing a copy. Austin, thank you so much for making time. You're truly a master of your craft and you are elevating the industry. So thank you. Where can listeners find out more about you?
So Instagram, I hang out there quite a bit. It's just my name, Austin Current. I'm the bearded guy there. So if you type in Austin and you see a profile photo with a big beard, you're probably close. And then YouTube, I'm going to start posting more on YouTube with exercise tutorials. That's kind of my bread and butter, and just teaching people how to safely and effectively do the lifts and kind of the nuances and subtleties of that. So, YouTube, just again, my name. And then scienceofstrengthtraining.com is the website. So I've just built a brand around the book, essentially. And it's sort of my second chapter in this professional pursuit of personal training and coaching and educating. So I'm excited to kind of see where that continues to evolve, because it's a fairly new, over the last couple of years, it's been a fairly new endeavor direction for me, but it's one that I'm excited about.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Austin.
Thanks, man.